on our explainer tonight, and it's all about the IEBC. And let me tell you why we're talking about this right now. The focus, I think, has really been on the referendum, right? We've heard quite a bit of talk about the bills. Which bill was it? We've also seen, the court cases that have been lodged and filed in court. We're awaiting that judgment, which is on notice. We're expecting it any time now. And we know that a June poll might highly be unlikely. But focus is now shifting to the IEBC, and we've seen those vacancies have been formally announced and a selection panel is being put together. But assuming that all of those hurdles in the way of a referendum were to be sorted out today, what is the state of IEBC, and will they be able to conduct a referendum? Well, as for the state of it, 3 commissioners only, 4 vacancies, like we've said, have been officially announced, and their replacement process has begun. But the commission still has no substantive CEO, and that is mired in a court process. And there are departmental heads who left and are yet to be replaced. However, what would be the timelines looking like for the IEBC should that bill be passed from Parliament to the President and then to the IEBC? Well, there would be a clock that would be ticking. And this clock is courtesy of the Constitution, Article 256, Section 5, which says the President shall, before assenting to the bill, request the IEBC to conduct within 90 days a national referendum for approval of the bill. The clock would begin ticking, although ideally it would have begun a little bit before, once the 24 county assemblies had passed it, because by then a referendum is inevitable. But remember, there is that court injunction barring them from preparing in any way. But under perfect circumstances, the 90 days would already be ticking. So what would they then begin to do? The first thing, obviously, would be to formulate a question, a referendum question, right? And the question, as we've told you, is a simple yes or no. You as the voter will not be receiving the entire bill. You will get a question asking you whether you agree to the amendments to Kenya's constitution. So that's the first thing they would do. And then here is where the operational process would begin. Now, usually, the IEBC would have an election operations plan for every election, and that is what guides their process and what needs to be done. In this case, they would do a referendum operational plan to guide their process. Now, this time, unlike the previous 2 referenda that we have a referendum bill in place. We do not yet have the regulations, which are supposed to be passed by Parliament. However, I'm told we can still tweak some of those regulations from the Elections Act. So, operation plan that would be in place. Then where do we move to? This thing that sometimes causes quite a bit of problems in this country: procurement of ballot materials. So what would those be? The ink, the ballot papers, including even the software for transmission that is used in the EVID kit, in the KEAMS kit as well, and the BVR kits as well. So let me begin with some of those hard ballot materials. So you have the ink, you have the ballot paper, which currently, I think for the previous by-elections we've had, were being done by De La Rue. Why? Because the contract we had with the Dubai-based company Al Ghurair lapsed. Okay, and they will be taking a look at the ballot boxes. How many are those? And, do they need to replace them? Now, because that contract with Al Ghurair lapsed, would need to go through a fresh tendering process for this to happen. Would also need a fresh tendering process for that software for our transmission. And would we be going to Otimofo, considering the controversy we had with them in the 2017 election? That would also be something to consider. And all of this going well, hoping that there would be no litigation in the process. Might be good to anticipate that. That happens a lot with a procurement process in this country. Then they would also be taking a look at another important thing: personnel, staffing issues. So a couple of things. They still don't have a substantive CEO. Many departmental heads have since moved to other arms in government, and indeed other arms outside the Independent Electoral Boundaries Commission. But also importantly, they would need those temporary electoral staff, that is presiding officers and their deputies. How many? This would be a massive exercise. In 2017, we had 40,883 polling stations, if I'm not wrong, and I'm told you would need between 2 to 4 staff. If you do that math, it's a massive exercise. Not only would you need to hire them, even on a temporary basis, but then you would need to train them in this process. And then you would go to this one, which is those polling stations that we talked about, all 40,883 of them. Well, you would need to remap them in some cases. You would need to republish them and gazette them and make that public knowledge. Now, a lot of this will use the current infrastructure that is ongoing as well. I want to talk about a very important one, and that is you, the voter, and that is the voter registration process. Now, remember, it's been estimated that between 2017 and 2022, there will be 5 million new people who will have turned 18 and will be eligible to vote. Now, we understand that the voter registration process is supposed to be continuous, so the IEBC would be taking a look at the voter register. Who are the new voters that would have been registered by the time of the referendum, updating that list. Remember, they would also be cleaning up that register to make sure that those who have passed on in that time are also cleaned out of the register. And then one important thing that happens here, they then open up the voter registration register to public scrutiny. So that allows you, the voter, to confirm that your details are correct, your polling station is correct, or indeed to change your polling station. You may have moved and want to exercise your mandate elsewhere. Now, once they've done all of this, of course, the big question is, what do they need for all of this? Money. Funding is an important issue. Now, I know you remember that 12 billion was reportedly allocated to this process, but remember, allocation and disbursement is another thing. Remember also, this financial year, which is closely coming to an end, did not factor in a referendum. So this is what the IEBC would need to do. They would need to table their estimates to the Treasury Department, who would then take it to Parliament, who would then push for a supplementary budget to then release those funds, whether that is 12 billion, 2 billion, or 14 billion, the funds that we have been hearing about. That is what it would take. Now, they have 90 days to do it, so it would be quite a tall order. And the reason we're telling you about this is because the focus is now on IEBC, considering a number of issues that were raised in 2017 with the last major election they conducted, which was subject to a Supreme Court case. They raised a number of issues. Will the IEBC step up to the plate and conduct its next big election? That is a referendum. If it happens, when it happens, in a free, fair and verifiable process. This is what they would need to do. That's my explainer tonight.